meet with your team during that time, that's fine. If you versus having everyone here together, but I'm not sure. I think there would be some value in you guys in sitting in. The problem is it will take 3 hours to go through all the pitches, right? So, and we realize that everyone's got a lot. Everyone has a lot going on because it's getting being near end of quarter. So I think Todd and I are going to talk in the morning about exactly how we want to run that. So we'll give you guys some detail around that. There is an assignment, a final assignment document that we were planning to have ready for today, but we kind of wanted to see how team meetings went today. That sort of, that basically says, addresses sort of like what do you need to submit for your MVP, on the last day of class. Your presentation and what needs to be in the presentation is somewhat predefined already. We talked about that 2 weeks ago, and that slide deck's up available, and the evaluation form we're going to be using is available. And then the third part is what your final canvas is going to look like. And one of the things we're trying to, Todd and I are still thinking about a little bit is how what we want you guys to have in terms of a final canvas, which really should be what you're pitching. But then on top of that, what we think you guys may need in terms of, one of the things that we've done is that we've always asked students, if you're going to do a canvas, you need to sort of say how you got to those points. And there's hypotheses and such that are built into the tool. But we may do some form of a due diligence package, when I say that, it won't be elaborate, but we want you to be able to substantiate the statements you're making in your pitch, right, and the statements and what's in your canvas. So, but I want to do that in a way that it doesn't become this gigantic deliverable, because first of all, there wouldn't be a lot of points associated with it. But Austin and I were just actually talking over lunch, and we don't do business plans anymore because that's not how the real world works. And we also don't do, in a class you may be asked, well, give me all your supporting documentation around this. Well, guess what? That's not what would be really happening in the real world too. But you do want to have sort of a due diligence package. So if someone is interested in what you're doing and wants to drill down a little bit further in terms of it, you want to have your data organized so that when someone says, well, why do you believe customers would like this functionality or this dimension of your app or this part of your value prop, you want to be able to point to the interviews or whatever else you had. So I'm trying to think about how we do that. And we may actually probably not do, I don't think we're going to push that a lot just because we want to be sensitive to the fact that you guys are trying to get an MVP done and trying to get a pitch done. Okay? So, but that document will be released tomorrow, probably by midday. That will sort of define what is due at the last class. So that's sort of the key logistics for, I think, our last two classes. So we have quite a number of the advisory board coming in. We'll email you guys a list of who's coming. Some of you may already know that based on some of your interactions with them, and touch points that you've had with them. So before I jump into today's class, any questions, concerns? This is sort of, if you think this is full court press, this is nothing compared to next year next quarter at this time, right? So don't, this is actually relatively mild. Although one of the things you'll learn today is when Austin gets up here is we didn't push the teams to have true MVPs like we're pushing them this year. Partly because we believe that it made the second quarter so much harder. We sort of spread things out to this time around to prevent that from happening. And I think one of the other things that I want you guys to really start thinking about is, Todd and I have a sense that a lot of you are still trying to make the MVP perfect, and from either a UI perspective or anything else like that. And it's the real important thing to be doing right now is getting out there and engaging folks with with your MVP, no matter what the UI is, or no matter what functionality is there or not there, because you can get a lot of insights at this point in time. So it's really, really important at this point to not be waiting, for the developers on the team, or the project manager on the team, trying to get things, trying to make sure every single task item is checked off versus trying to get it out there, because you don't have, really only have another 2 weeks to get feedback. Really, even less. I'd argue less than 2 weeks, and and that's sort of a lesson learned that we had. and Austin and I were talking about this a little over lunch. There was a team last year called Sagenda, which was basically working an idea similar to something similar to what a team a year ago had worked on, which is like, how do you, if you want to call an event with a bunch of your friends, how do you get them all to show, how do you coordinate it in a way that doesn't involve 20 emails or 20 text messages, and it was, and of all the teams that presented in a couple weeks, they were the highest rated team by the advisory board. But they didn't really have an MVP when they pitched. They had some nice slides and some nice mock-ups, and they never really got to an MVP, even in the second quarter. They had parts of it working, but they struggled with getting to something that was truly launchable, and that team, that team wasn't planning on moving forward, but they didn't. They struggled. They set such high expectations at the mid-course presentations that they didn't do as well in the final presentations, partly because they didn't deliver on what they promised, and which they had built in very nice slides with a little bit of functional UI, but not a lot. And so it's important to not worry about that piece, because sometimes it's much more important just to have something working. As you guys saw when we did Group Hug the first week, Jeremiah really didn't figure out what, some of the inherent weaknesses of the product until he actually played around with it the night before he was presenting, right? And we don't want you to have to be in that situation. We want you to be in a situation where you know what you've got. No one's going to come into their presentations in early March with, we have the perfect MVP, right? We know that. But what's going to be more important is for you to say, here's the MVP we got, and here's what we've learned by going out there with it. And here's what we've heard from users and customers. And I think that's going to be more compelling than trying to make it perfect in any way, shape, or form. So and I know some teams are really feeling the pressure to do that. And I think there's an inherent conflict a little bit that Todd and I also wanted to make sure we addressed, which is your deliverables, the perfect deliverable may not translate into like the grade, and disconnect deliverable from grade a little bit in terms of making sure that you accomplish, you've got some key functionality, your value prop comes through in your MVP is really important. Making sure that you've put together a pitch that resonates with a group of entrepreneurs and angels and VCs is really important. Are they going to care that you've got sexy animations and you've got this great UI? No, not really. What they're gonna do is drill down on your value prop and challenge you in terms of whether they believe it's right or wrong. That's where they're gonna go, and from that they're gonna say, is there a business model here that supports it? And they all know that no matter what you think your value prop is, no matter what you think the business model is that you're pursuing, it's gonna continue to change. So, given all that, as I was thinking about how do I structure this class for you guys, it was easy to sort of put together a bunch of slides. But then I thought about it a little bit more, and I said, what we really haven't given you guys the opportunity to do is to engage with someone who was in this class a year ago, who didn't do everything perfectly in this class, but did well in the class, but is now running a business based off an idea that started in this class, and sort of understand how they evolved from this point in time a year ago to June to today. And that's what we're going to do. And it's going to be a little bit different in that it's not designed, Austin has put together some, I asked Austin, put together excerpts of all of the presentations you've done from this class to angel investors and VCs that you've talked to, and walk you guys through sort of how the Sweetperk business has evolved, okay? And we want that to be interactive today. I'm going to be posing questions. You guys are going to be posing questions. Sweetperk is one of our companies that sits today in the Evanston incubator, so we actually get a little bit closer interaction with it. I've attended a number of their angel pitches, including one just this past a week ago Monday. So, and I think it's important for you guys to understand this process, but not just in terms of where they're at today, but where they were in this class. And what's unique about Sweetperk is that this was one of our 7 teams last year that in May fully launched their product, had a formal launch party here in the old Borders bookstore in downtown Evanston, launched both Android and iOS simultaneously. And what came into the June presentations, basically giving the same exact pitch that they did to all the Evanston businesses at their launch party that Downtown Evanston ran for them. So they truly were able to like dual purpose what they actually did as a pitch to the initial merchants they were trying to sign up for their app here in downtown Evanston, and that's what they actually presented to our advisory board, which of course resonated really well. Last year, deal sites and everything that was going on around local commerce was hot, right? This year, a few of you emailed me in the fall saying, I don't want to do deals. So it's interesting how market perceptions have changed over time. But what I want, as Austin's going through his story today, I want you guys to sort of understand how their idea evolved, how they did customer development initially, and how they found a really good early evangelist, and how they leveraged that, and how they made conscious decisions around what to launch as an MVP. Now, remember, their MVP happened later in the class, but they actually had lots of people using their apps by the time they presented in June. And our hope is that all of you will be in a similar position to that. And I think it was important for us today to get a view of someone who did this. And it was not just Austin, but his team. And a number of the people, his team includes basically mostly all NUvention web students, including actually from year 1 and year 2 at this point in time. So this is meant to be, I've asked Austin to do this as a favor to us because we didn't have a window to do this before. Last year when we had Nikhil come in and talk to the students about pitches, he had just closed on, he had closed but hadn't been able to announce he had just raised $3 million in financing, right? And he had gone through a very different process using an incubator and couldn't talk about a lot of the details. So we have a unique window into someone who was in this class. Tab, you have a question?
So with respect to the pitch that we do for the class, should we go in with the perspective of getting feedback from VCs and angels, or are we going to be presenting such that we're expecting to really raise or expect harsh sort of VC type feedback?
I think you need to prepare yourself psychologically for very harsh, very direct feedback. But that feedback is from people who want to help you. They're going to be hard, and Austin will tell you, no matter what we didn't realize how hard they were going to be last year. This year we know they'll probably be very tame this year, given how things given how we set them up. But I think they're going to they're not. As you guys remember from what I presented, there's no ask in what you're going to present, unless you want to put an ask in there. There's no requirement for an ask, because you're not at that stage. You're at a stage of getting feedback from people who've built businesses and invested in businesses and done it successfully. Remember, all of them have biases. Austin will talk to you about presenting to, in the last 3 months, he's presented to the Wildcat Angels group, which is a group of angels associated with Northwestern University, and also to Harvard Business School Angels, which he actually just did a week ago Monday. And each one of those groups is very different. And everyone gains different perspectives. It's weird because you don't know how people think about things. So Austin presented with Jeremiah. Jeremiah from GrooveLook also presented at this event this past Monday. And the third company was basically a company that's in the business of mobile dent and bumper repair. Like, so if you've got a dent in your car, they'll come out and fix it. This probably doesn't reflect well on our Harvard Business School alums, but they like the mobile dent repair business much better. Because their simplistic way of thinking about things is, who wants to be in the music business? Man, the music business sucks, right? At a Uber level, it's easy. All of us know that, right? There's tons of articles being written about it. Does that mean there's no money to be made in the music business? Absolutely not. But that's not how they thought about it. And when they looked at Sweetperk, they said, well, the local merchant isn't, we don't see a lot of growth coming out of local merchants going forward. Between the major, with the major big boxes and and e-commerce, does the local merchant have a chance going forward? So if you're focusing on them, are they really the right target to focus on? Very different perspective, right? But that's because of the audience. Demographically, that audience was a little bit older, so and they thought about things a little differently. I was personally surprised because I looked at like the dent business. I'm like, what there's nothing there, guys. Come on. It's like there's lots of people in that space, and maybe you can add some technology to it, but is there the minute you have to hire employees and give them a car and make them drive all over the place, your risk profile is going up dramatically, right? That's at least how I thought about it. They looked at it and said, oh, there's an interesting roll-up opportunity here. We can sort of create a brand, yeah.
What was their reasoning for why you needed the dent fixed immediately?
No, it's just that you got, most of us, if you live in the city or you live in Evanston, you get dings and stuff on your car, right? So some of us give a damn about it and actually fix it. Others of us don't really care, and we won't deal with it until we have to sell the car, or we don't even bother with it. But there are a lot of people who want to, their idea was to basically have a guy and they're doing this, and it resonated with folks. So, and they did show a little iPad app in terms of and they would hand the iPads out to dealerships so the dealers can do the estimating for them. There was a little bit of technology involved with it, but that resonated. So I use that as an example, guys, just to help you understand that sometimes things resonate with people and you don't know, right? And that's why it's important over the next week or so as you get your decks together to try to go out and talk to different audiences outside of the people in this class, outside of your advisors. Parents, friends, actually may not be bad sources, although they like you. So, ideally you want to get in front of people who don't like you, right? But as a team, that's hard because it's going to be harder to find that type of audience. So, let me give you a little bit of background on Austin and Sweetperk. So, last year we had tons of our teams focusing on local businesses. There were actually 3 different teams that were focusing on local businesses, and we felt bad for downtown Evanston merchants because they were all getting bombarded by Northwestern students who had ideas, right? And last year, Groupon was the ultimate and high flyer, right? Everything Groupon could do nothing wrong, so and there was everyone was focused on this space. Sweetperk was something that focused on a specific customer that actually Austin knew something about because of his involvement here at Kellogg. He got involved. He got connected to an event called the Downtown Evanston Mashup, right? Which involves, which is an opportunity. It's done right after Kellogg orientation on one of the big tents on the beach, and it's sort of a meetup of all downtown Evanston businesses. And it's very heavily attended because it's a great way for those folks to network. And Kellogg students help facilitate part of it. And Austin was the person who led that process. So he understood the downtown business merchant a little bit better. But he came to Kellogg after working at Johnson Controls, a very large traditional company, but with a strong passion around entrepreneurship. And the role he took within his team was not just one of being a leader, but one that was which I describe as sort of being the glue that puts things together. If you look at Austin today, he may be president and CEO of Sweetperk, but he's also developing, he's selling, and he's selling to end customers as well as to investors. He's doing everything and anything it takes to grow a business. And that's what you need to do at an early stage. Sweetperk is a great example of a company that has a business model, has a target customer, has a value prop, but Austin will be the first one to acknowledge to you guys that all those are still fluid. They're still going to be changing. So some of you are still struggling to get all those pieces. What you're going to hear today from an alum of this class is even when you have all those pieces, you don't really have all those pieces. Because it's a constant evolution. The market is very dynamic. What Sweetperk represents is a real unique fit in going after what I think is a unique opportunity, because in the world today as a small business, you've got Groupon, Living Social, everyone who wants to do a deal with you, right? But the economics of all those suck. On the flip side, you can use more traditional media, which you can't tell if it works really well for you. You can't really be actively in that you have limited budgets, so you can't actively even be investing in keyword search and social media and all those type of things. But you need to be doing something there. So someone needs to, that inherently creates white space. That's the white space that Sweetperk recognized. And one of the most unique things about their business is they found sort of an intermediary between themselves and all these small businesses, which are these BID districts, that sort of plays a role within that. So I'm going to shut up and let Austin come up here and tell you guys, walk you guys through the story. I'm going to be posing some questions. You guys should definitely post some questions. We'll leave time for Q&A at the end. For some of you in this room, Austin and Sweetperk is a very, very good potential partner for your businesses. I didn't invite him here for that reason, but as I was thinking about some of your businesses, there's certainly partnership opportunities. But it's great when you can invite someone who was a student a year ago to come in a year later and sort of share their story. And my hope is it'll be something you connect with. So without further ado, Austin, they're all yours.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, and thanks from Professor Marasco for that rousing introduction. I didn't think he thought so highly of us at Sweetperk, but I'm definitely happy to know that that is the case. And for all you guys in NUvention Web today, I want to say you guys are in a very unique position to build a business, to start a business, or to have the opportunity to work with a startup company trying to validate a specific market. And so it's a great thing that you're doing. I think this class in NUvention Web, in a few years from now, is going to be recognized as one of the pioneers in terms of helping entrepreneurs or people who are interested in starting businesses get a jump start in it. So I applaud you for doing it, and I want to say take advantage of this situation. I'm going to tell you that by telling you a story of how Sweetperk evolved over time through this class. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll see that the worst thing you can do to yourselves as part of this experience is to not build an MVP, to not get it out there and test with your customers, and to not actually develop something that you can be proud of, whether or not you choose to move forward with your idea. So, March 2011, this was our first pitch to the advisory board for NUvention Web. You can see our logo now, powered by Sweetperk. Looks nice, crisp, simple. This was our logo when we started. They're little huts with smoke rising. We were focused on living local. We had this concept out there that we thought was going to change the dynamics of how Groupon work in local business. We thought it was going to add more value. So let me preface that by saying that we hadn't done any customer validation. We had just worked on the idea of working with local merchants. We sat in our cubes talking with one another. We did research on the computer, and that was what went into this presentation. Target market. We said there's a big opportunity in local commerce. Then we said something about internet display advertising. We said there's a market for freestanding inserts. And we said local newspapers are gradually losing market share. And if you looked at 50% of that, we're looking at a potential market of 8.3 billion. That's what we said. And then we said the pain point that we're addressing was for businesses. So local merchants aren't good at advertising. They have very limited budgets for advertising. The digital options are expensive for them. And we said it's difficult for them to measure their ROI on marketing. So this stuff, all you guys know, how do you make money? We said, oh, the first promotion was going to be free. We said the possible revenue models, merchants will pay per promotion, or they'll pay per redemption, or there'll be this subscription tier. And as far as scalability and growth, we were saying, okay, we'll partner with these business improvement districts, and through them, we'll find a way to get merchants on board. Guess what happened with the NU advisory board? These are just excerpts from our pitch, but can anyone guess? Take a guess. Yes?
It seems too many things going on. Probably master error. I don't know if that's what they said.
Exactly. And for those who don't like ball cats, I apologize. I'll move over quickly. But we were out of focus. Just by sitting in the classroom, talking amongst ourselves, thinking we're going to build something, we had these grand visions of what we're going to build, but there was nothing specific about them. There was no pain point we're addressing. There was no viable revenue model. It was just very, very broad. So the takeaway, and I remember, because right after the pitch, the responses we got, I left. I just walked out of the building. I didn't want to talk to anybody because I was really upset. I mean, it was great because they told us we had no idea what we were doing. We needed to get back to the drawing board, which was true. But at that point in time, I just couldn't take it. At the end of the day, no clear value proposition. We didn't have a product. Business model was, yeah, there's something there. We hope to make money, but it could disappear tomorrow, and nobody knows what happened. So that was March of 2011. So then what did we do? We got to work. And I want to mention, because Professor Marasco highlighted that you guys actually have to have worked through the business model by now and are still working, are currently working on the MVP, is that right? So I remember in January, we had started discussing our software architecture in terms of what we were going to build. So this was over the break. I tried to get a team together to start preparing to build an MVP. So you guys might feel like this is coming up early, but it's never too early. It's like hitting a golf ball, I think. You can never hit it too early. So what we did after the pitch is that we went to work. We started going around talking to local merchants in Evanston. And we realized there were other groups, because it was kind of low key. I mean, we knew there were other groups working on local merchants, but we didn't really know who it was. We didn't want to ask Sandeep, like put him on the spot. But we knew there were other people doing it. So, you know, we went around, started talking to local merchants, and they said, oh yeah, there's another group in here, ask us about the same thing. We said, what? And so there was this sense of, okay, there's competition out there, we need to get to work, we need to get this thing done. And if you look at the actual bigger picture, you know, I'll tell my friends at Kellogg, we're working on something for local merchants. They said, have you heard of Groupon? Groupon is coming out with Groupon now. You know, you guys are going to be dead before you even launch anything, which is fine. Yeah, it was. I didn't like it at the time. It was tough to hear, but this was a class. This is an opportunity to take a chance, pursue your idea. If you make a mistake, there's very low cost to it. It's an opportunity to pivot as well.
So you were getting killed by something that hadn't even launched yet.
Exactly.
Because Groupon was doing a great job of generating all this
Hyping it.
PR,
Yep,
hyping
exactly.
Groupon now. I mean,
Yep.
it was going to be like Groupon on steroids.
Exactly. So didn't pay much attention to it. I knew it was there. Did the research about it. Learned that it was somewhat different from what we were thinking. We still didn't know what we were thinking about building. So I went around, started talking to local merchants. We spoke with about maybe 10, 15 of them. And the key point here is, you saw our pitch before we started talking to merchants. And I'll show you how our pitch evolved after we spoke with merchants. But we went and we talked to them. We actually sat down, talked to them about local marketing, you know, the options that they use, how they think about them, and why they use them, why they don't use them. So this is like, I don't know, maybe it's trying to date someone. When you're actually trying to learn about them, when you're trying to learn where their values are, what they find to be important to them. And I remember when we were being told about customer validation, about getting out there and talking to customers, this was just coming at us. You know, we said, okay, yes, you know, go out and talk to them. What are they going to say? They have problems marketing. We heard it, but we really didn't realize how much it meant. Because until you actually talk to someone and put yourself in their shoes, you can't really understand what it is that you're building for them. Because you're not building this tool for yourself. You have a target customer in mind. And if you assume that you know what your value proposition is going to be, you know, you're probably mistaking. So this customer validation was very important, because what we learned through that process was that there is someone else who's been working at marketing these local businesses, and they've been doing this for decades. We knew there were chambers of commerce who existed, but chambers of commerce actually make money by gaining members. But we never heard of a business improvement district, right? So I see someone from a distance, I think they look good, I want to ask them out for dinner, and I can say this now because I'm married, so my wife won't say much about that. But you won't know what their values are, you know, what they're interested in, until you actually talk to them. What we learned through this customer validation process was there is a brand these business improvement districts have that a lot of the merchants trust. And so there's this big problem. Everybody is trying to extract value from local merchants. But they were all building these huge sales forces, calling the local merchants on the phone, and they were all doing it at the same time. So then the local merchants just get, you know, they just stop paying attention. A new option comes up, some may try, some may not. but they all said good things about this business improvement district. So the next step, the natural next step for us was to say, okay, this business improvement district seems to be very significant for the merchants. Let's find out what's there. I had met the owner of Lulu's a long time ago because I was interested in doing a separate project in Evanston. Someone told me he was also interested in it. We built a connection. So I emailed him and said, hey, we would like to be introduced to Carolyn Delutry, who is the executive director for downtown Evanston. And I say this because I just want to emphasize that you probably have a network around your target customer base, more so than you realize. So once you start thinking about reaching out to them, think about who may be able to connect you to someone there, and then leverage that connection to get introduced. So I got introduced by someone this Carolyn Delutry knew very well, and so that made us, that gave us the opportunity to get a meeting very quickly. So we went in there, we talked to her about what we were doing. I think we had about 3 meetings, and then we realized that her primary job was to market these businesses, but at the same time, all her businesses were interested in how do I make Groupon work, how do I make Facebook work, and her brand was essentially losing its significance to merchants because she wasn't keeping up as far as digital commerce was going. And so we said, hey, we're trying to build this mobile solution, what can we do for you? So she brought out a coupon book, and she said, well, I've done this coupon book, it's tied to one of my growth metrics, but not many people are using it, so what can you do with it? So we went back, explored it a little bit, and came up with an idea and said, well, how about we take this coupon book and put it on a mobile phone, because a lot of people are using their mobile phones now, a lot of people are shopping with them. We could essentially take this, put it on a phone, and see how people use it. Maybe you could get more reach. And so that for us was the beginning of what an MVP would be. So what we did was we built this MVP. This was what it looked like. I don't know how many people of you use the app today, but it looks extremely different. I mean, it looks very, very different from now. So this is an actual perk page where you see the details about a perk. Before, when you first launched it, there was a list of categories that said shopping, food, entertainment, attractions, that sort of thing. You press on them, you go into further details. There was a business directory page. Now it's, it's much more different. It's evolved over time. So my point with this is the MVP started very rough looking, but it was an MVP. So we built this. We set a target date for May 2011. So we did the A/B pitch in March. We set a target launch in Evanston in May. And I say this to underscore the fact that you're in class, you might be building this project to get an A or to pass this class. But what we actually had was an outside commitment to build a product. So whether or not we wanted to do it, whether or not we wanted to put in the hours it took to do it, the commitment was there. And I personally, I knew of the relationship between Northwestern and the city, and I said, we're not going to do this deal and have it fall down. So it was very personal to me. And so what did we do to actually get this thing built? We had a team agreement that essentially gave everyone close to equal share of the company. We set terms for when if people decide to graduate, so if people graduate and decided not to stay with the company, what they get, versus those who stayed. And as I mentioned, equity was fairly even because the point was trying to build something. That was the actual goal of the class. It wasn't about owning share of something that didn't exist yet. And so based on that, we had hackathons on Saturdays. Like we'd show up here at Kellogg and sit in an office. I'll bring candy, bring pop. We'll spend 7 hours working on this product, go home, work on it the following week. I'll be on the phone with people discussing whether or not we've hit our milestones. We did that week after week, weekend after weekend, in order to get what we promised. So it's very important to have some accountability built in. Ours was external, so it worked for us. And we're also all highly motivated because this was an effort that we had sort of equal stake in. Even though it was a class, it was very equitable. There was nothing about, I have more control, you have this. No. We wanted to build something, wanted to validate a market, and so that's what we did. And so we launched in downtown Evanston. As Professor Marasco mentioned, it was a big party. We had a booth. We were talking to local merchants. The mayor was there to see, the city manager was there to see it. It was great. It felt really good because this was just supposed to be a class. This was supposed to be a market that was crowded, and this was supposed to be a space that we couldn't even think about playing. But because we had pursued it, talk to the customer, validate it, and build something, you know, we had all this attention, we had a lot of press, and it felt wonderful.
Austin, can you talk a little bit about, like, your group of students and, you know, downtown Evanston's a business, and, you know, how they would, you know, how you were able to convince them to take a bet on you, and then second of all, how you thought about pricing this or not pricing this initially to them.
So this was really interesting about going out to speak to your customer, is that if they have a pain point that you're willing to solve, they're more than happy to work with you, because it's a pain point that they want to solve. So by talking with downtown Evanston, this is something that she or this business realized that, okay, this is an opportunity to find a solution. So take, for example, companies coming together, like Redbox. I've seen posters around here. And Redbox is very good about this. I think it's Coinstar is the name of the company. So they're always trying to get new ideas about what the next business model around coin stations would be. So I see flyers around here where they're having a brainstorming session for people to come up with the next idea for something like that. So that's how I see this customer validation process. So we went to Carolyn DeLutry, downtown Evanston, and we uncovered this pain point, and she was willing to take a chance. So if another group had gone to her with the same proposition, I think she would have been willing to do it. But we uncovered it primarily because we were able to meet, talk with her, take the time to understand what that pain point was, and propose a specific solution to it. On the flip side, we were students. This is a class project. She was thinking, well, why should I make a bet on them? Because, you know, they'll probably be done with school and completely forget about it, and my credibility will be gone. And so I want to say we were lucky, but we're also persistent. Like, we walked in there and said, we're going to do this, and we're going to get it done by this date. And so don't take it for granted that you are here at Northwestern. You are, some of you are at Kellogg. It's a reputable institution, and you guys are considered to be very serious students. So just don't take it for granted. When you go out and you tell someone that you're going to do something, they actually take you seriously. And I think that also lent to the credibility of her wanting to take this risk with us. In hindsight, I realized that there was another group that had talked to her, and she said yes to that other group as well. At the end of the day, we were the ones who delivered the MVP, and so she stuck with us. And that's how it worked. And over time, we had regular meetings with her over weeks. Every week we'd meet and we'd talk about it. So we built that relationship as time went on as well.
Pricing?
Pricing. So initially when we launched in downtown Evanston, it was free. Primarily because we had uncovered this market, nobody really understood it, and we needed their help to help us price for future markets. So essentially we told them, we'll do this for free, to which he said, absolutely, yes. And I think that's a great way to build an MVP product for a customer that you're trying to validate. Primarily because you are going into it with some idea about solving a problem for them. They know what their problems are. Most of them don't know how to articulate them. So they can't really help you build anything. So essentially it's time invested from both sides. And for us, it didn't make sense to say, we'll build this for you and we'll charge you, because we couldn't guarantee that we'll be working on this after school. We couldn't guarantee anything. We couldn't even guarantee that it will work. And so by offering it free to them, they decided, okay, that's an additional incentive for them to continue working with us. And it's quite remarkable because, and this will probably come as the questions come up later, because downtown Evanston, we weren't sure how well the app was performing, and we thought because it was free, merchants were not incentivized to push the app. And downtown Evanston was not incentivized to promote the app. But as I look at the download trend today, I look at the scanning trend today, it continues to go up, and it's still free for downtown Evanston. So that assumption was wrong, but in reality, what we still have now is a valuable customer, someone who trusts us, and a test market for future developments going forward. And so even giving it free to downtown Evanston then continues to be valuable to us as a company. And so this is the next pitch that we made to the advisory board in June. So we had changed the white smoke huts were no longer there. We had changed and completely branded it to the community, so the business strategy was clear, how we're going to differentiate and enter the market. And the value proposition was a little bit clearer as well. It wasn't just about businesses. Now we had identified this merchant association. We called them merchant associations then. We talked about them a little bit, but with not as much detail. So this slide here shows from what we had before, talking to the customer, building an MVP, brought some clarity to the pain points that we were addressing. We were able to communicate to the advisory board how the platform works. So the merchant goes on, logs on, creates their perk. People use it by scanning and redeeming, and we show them how well their perks are performing over time. And then we had a better idea about the business model. We said we'll gain revenue from developing an app per community because talking with Downtown Evanston showed that they would actually pay for something like this because they had a marketing budget. Furthermore, we said, okay, we'll charge a CPM on a CPM basis, so that will be based on how many people are looking at the content, and then we'll do something related to ad placements. So understand that at this time, we just had an MVP out there. We had 400 users that we presented to the advisory board, but we still had no idea how we were going to make money. But we took a shot at trying to say how we're going to make money. And we got models of that from the class. We got models of that from the advisory board for people who were on our board who we could talk to about these different pricing models. But it was there and it was much clearer than the first version that we had. So the result, we got some applause. People were happy. We had customers. We had validated a market. It was still the Groupon craze time, so everybody was still a little skeptical. But nonetheless, they recognized that we had made the effort and we had built something. So the main takeaway from there was, okay, you've realized success in Evanston. How do you scale it? And one would think that out of a class, when a product like this comes out, people will be happy, pat you on the back, pop champagne, whatever. No, the advisory board is there to, because of the experience, because of what they've done, they're there to constantly challenge you and push back a little. And if you are willing to take that challenge, then you can grow something. And if not, then that's not the case. But the value proposition was a little bit warmer. We were getting there. We were talking about businesses, and we're also talking about merchant associations, but it still wasn't clear. We had an MVP. So in trying to build that MVP, I mentioned how we set this accountability measure, and we built this. But we're also showing up, getting the work done. I understand in school, you have a lot of other pressures. There's homework, there's social activities, there are all these other things that you need to get done. I personally wanted to build this so badly. I can't explain why, but I really, really, really wanted to. And somehow that seeped out to the other members of my team. And they also believed in it. And so when I'd say, hey, Saturday afternoon, do you guys want to hang at the Jake and eat candy and write software? Almost all of them showed up. But that's how we got it done. So it's not up to the software people to write the software while everybody else is out there doing something. And it's not about the management team saying, well, this is what our sort of storyboard, our story priority chart looks like. This is what you need to be working on. Is it done? Is it done? That's, personally, I believe it's about the team working together and doing whatever it takes to counterbalance the amount of work that needs to be done. And so I was willing to dig into the software, get stuff done. I was willing to work with design. I was willing to go out and pitch. And everybody else was willing to do the same thing. And we kept it open. So everybody had one primary role, but they also had a secondary role, and they also could have a tertiary role. And so people collectively felt like part of the team. I think that was what that was one of the main factors that enabled us to build this thing. Sometimes you may have, you may have conflicts. You may have people who would think others are not working as much as they are, but whoever is the leader of the team will have to manage that. And I think that's really important to get in this MVP built. And at this point, our business model was a little bit believable, but it still wasn't. It wasn't convincing enough to the advisory board, and it still wasn't convincing to us. But it was something that we're willing to move forward with. And so it was June. Everybody had graduated on the team. One of our team members was not going to go forward because he was going to take an internship. The other Kellogg student, his wife had taken ill, and he couldn't be a part of this anymore, so he needed to work and support that. And so it wasn't really a question for those of us who remained about whether or not we wanted to continue. I definitely wanted to continue, and the others, so Kalen decided to put off his job to continue with the team, and Phil was always on board with working with a startup and going for it. So we just followed along naturally, worked through the summer, went through a lot of pitches, acquired other customers. So our first customer, because we were very open in communicating with them, decided to open the doors to other people who do the same kind of work that they do. So they invited us to pitch sessions, we talked about the business, and that's how we continue to acquire more customers. And so our next pitch, which was in November at Wildcat Angels, we had refined the go-to-market strategy. We had proven that we have a market. We had some successes going forward. And so we thought, okay, this is it. This is where everybody is going to sort of raise us up and say, you guys have done a great job, and you know, we're going to move forward with you. And the way we've done that is we identified the pain point specifically, and we said, you know, there are all these solutions out there that merchants are trying to understand, and these solutions work if the merchant has the time to actually pursue them. At the same time, there's this shopping district manager who is in the same circle as the merchant, but really is far removed from them in their marketing efforts. And so what we're doing was bridging that gap between the shopping district manager and the local merchants with our tool. And so we said, this is our solution. We built the app, it's branded, shoppers use it to shop, but the big opportunity was leveraging those other platforms and then sort of placing the ads that merchants have at our platform on these bigger social network platforms. So the key point here is we built something and it changed over time. So we've identified a market. Now how do we scale it? It's by leveraging these other platforms, and that's what we pitched. We had, again, clarified the revenue model, how we're going to make money, which was just 3 levels, so app development, redemptions, and what I just showed you, which we called digital marketing services. And then we got to this point where we're talking about unit metrics make a great story. I said, okay, what we're seeing in Evanston is there were 1.7 redemptions per merchant per month. And on average, each merchant was getting 180 views through the app, which was great, and we were really happy about that. So if you looked at the unit economics, we said it will cost the merchant about $18 a month to be on the Sweetperk platform. And then, so this is what we had changed. We had added this new marketing services thing. So I explained it here by saying, for premium services, merchants will pay $180 a month. And then a very distinguished member of the audience raised his hand and said, wait. So you mean to say you're driving about 2 redemptions per month, and a merchant is going to pay you $180 to get those 2 people in? And I said, yeah. Which was my moment, like Herman Cain, when he was asked about, I think President Obama's policy on Libya, I think, and he was trying to. This is someone who's running for presidential. He's in the candidacy for president of the United States and didn't know who Gaddafi was or what Libya was about, and that's how I felt at that point in time, because I felt like I had no idea how to explain $180 to get 2 merchants coming in. So my point there is, this is a constant evolving thing. And communication is a key part of that. You will see when you guys pitch in March. You can work on your pitch deck, and then please invest all the time to make it clear, to make it simple. But there's still going to be questions. As Professor Marasco mentioned, there's still going to be biases. People are not going to really understand what you're talking about. But take it as a learning opportunity, because that slide is gone. I don't have that slide in our pitch deck anymore. I have a different way of communicating it, and when someone wants to understand it, we can go into the details. We can use the due diligence documents that he's talking about. which is essentially the supporting documentation for your business model canvas. So the Wildcat pitch went, but that one slide was another learning opportunity for us. The business model needed work. Our value proposition was clear. We had a mature app, and we had a functioning portal. So I'll say a little bit of a functioning portal. When we launched the Downtown Evanston app, we had just the app. We didn't have a website where merchants could log on to create content. But we had this three-sided network where we had users, we had the merchants, and we had the business improvement district. And we had to pick where we thought the actual value proposition was. And so the website was gone. We focused on the app because we were this mobile team. And we continued pitching without the website. But over the summer, we had built the website. Merchants could log on, could create content, and we could actually demo it to people who were interested. And so this also evolved over time. But again, the business model still needed work. And the feedback that I got from a lot of VCs was, you need to get your story down. You need to know your stuff. Yes?
At this point, did you have paying customers?
Yes, at this point we had paying customers. Yep. So we started having, we launched in, the last AB pitch was in June. We started having paying customers in August. And I'll show you a little bit about, so that's a great question. So currently, I think we just signed a contract with Champaign-Urbana to develop one for them. But these are the apps now. Everyone paid except Downtown Evanston. And we're at a point where we are charging local merchants. So our first invoices go out at the end, so March 1st to customers who have content on the app.
So how are you charging them actually? Like, since you're not probably doing the $180 a month thing,
Yeah.
like what did you actually end up going with for your business model?
We decided to make it simple and understandable for everyone. And we charge $20 a month, so long as you have a perk on the app for that month. And if you send push notifications to people who are following you, we charge you an additional $5 if you send as many as you want. So the merchants understand it. It's very competitive when you think about companies like Belly, which is also doing local, but it's not the branded approach, and much more economical when you consider like the Groupon model or the Live in Social model.
This is pretty human resource intensive for your team. If you have to continue making branded products,
Yeah.
then you need developers to do that. So like in terms of the scalings, that's kind of difficult.
Yeah. Yes, it is, and we've gotten that feedback a lot. And it's interesting because we had it on the Android platform, we had it on iPhone, and the feedback we kept getting was, well, how about my Windows phone? The BlackBerry people are really, because they're a little jaded, because most of the app people don't focus on them, and this was another opportunity for them to say, hey, what's going on here? And so we realized it, but it was important for us to continue proving this model, so we just said, right now it's only available on Android and iPhone, and we're looking into further opportunities to expand. And how do we do that without increasing our development cost? And what we've decided to do going forward is to use this cross-platform solution that leverages HTML5 and the local storage capability, and then CSS, and then wrap it in using PhoneGap. So that way we have a stable code base, probably 95% of the code base would be the same, and then the only thing we'd have to do is change some parameters and add some new graphics and make it branded for a specific community. Because all we brand literally are the splash screen, the colors, and the icons. So that's the plan going forward, and we're raising money to do that.
Is your team full time on this right now, or do you guys all part-time?
3 of us are full time. Matt Gilk is a senior undergrad, but he's working literally close to full time as well.
Just one more question technologically. Like, did you guys, when you built it originally for iPhone and Android, did you build native apps originally, or did you use some other? I mean, you weren't using PhoneGap, I assume. But do you know like what you guys built it on?
Yeah, we built them natively.
Okay.
So it's amazing how the team came together. But initially, we had Christopher on the team, and he was familiar with JavaScript, not with Java. And we said, hey, can you do this? Because first of all, we decided we're going to do it on Android because Android was growing faster. People were switching from older phones, were picking up on Android. And I don't know why we thought more people would use the Android platform. So he started working on that, and then through Sandeep and through Kalen, we found out about Matt. Matthew Gilquist worked on NUvention the year before, and he had iPhone expertise. So we said, hey, $150 or something like that. Would you copy this? And he said, sure. And we wrote him a check, and he did it. And iPhone, we have 75% users on our iPhone and 25% on Android. So it's amazing how things like that work, because we thought we knew where the answer was. We picked Android, and the reverse happened.
I think you should mention you had a third developer who built a server that would work for any system, any app you made. You had a server backend that worked. Like, you built your own server. You built everything so that you could make multiple platforms.
Yep. Yep. So we took Amazon Web Services. It's free. I think if you pick an AMI and then you pick the smallest size, it was free for 1 year. So we just used an Ubuntu server and used its capabilities and pinged that. And so it's scalable now, but we're like, we need to get off this. We need to get to something like Heroku quickly. But that's all back-end stuff. I mean, when you see a startup that's working great and you actually dig into it, it's just like everyone's life every day. There are things that need to be managed constantly. But it definitely worked, and there are cheap alternatives to getting your app out there and working with it.
Austin, how much of your due diligence you have now with investors focuses on some of these back-end questions versus the business side today?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
In due diligence you're having with investors,
yes.
Are they fixated by the fact that you've got back-end work you need to do and you're moving platforms, or are they more fixated around how you're going to scale the business and and what's going on with the 5 now 6 company BIDs you're working with?
They never have questions about the technology or the back-end. They're always interested in how are you going to scale it, what's your target market, how are you approaching it, and how do you continue to add value. Those are where all the questions are. And so to that question, actually, we went back and revisited our business model content, the supporting document, and revised everything based on everything that we'd learned over the past year. And so people ask us, do you have a business plan? And we say, absolutely, we do. It's not written in the traditional business plan sense, but it has all the required segments that you want, and here you go. And so it's really helped them, and they give us feedback on that as far as scalability and getting new customers.
So you've redone your canvas from what you submitted in class once so far, or?
We've done it twice so far.
Twice so far.
The first time we did it, it was during the summer, and then a month ago we revisited it.
And no one said, well, I still want to see a business plan on top of this canvas?
No. Yeah, the canvas has been good. So this is where we are today. The app has changed a lot. We still think the user experience is a little too much. It could be made simpler. We are working on that. But we don't see ourselves as an app development company. We see ourselves more as a marketing company, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But this is what we show to investors. We're absolutely focused on our customer. And our customers are business improvement districts, the main street communities, or malls. And the reason is that these groups have people who already market the businesses. And this is a tool for them to more effectively market their businesses. So we just leave that open out to investors who say, well, yeah, that's great, but I don't think it has value. Or people who say, well, that's great, let's see how we can extract value out of it. But the point is, it's focused, and it's taking time to actually have that focus.
Austin, can you talk a bit about the conference you guys went to in North Carolina and how that influenced everything for you guys?
Yeah. So initially, when I talked about pitching to the AB, I said, we were warmer, our business model needs to improve, blah, blah. So at the end of it, there was this networking session, and we were walking around. I wasn't sure whether it was you or it was Todd, or maybe it was Chip. Someone said, talk to as many people as you can. And so Phil and I just said, okay, fine. We just started talking to everyone, and we ran into Han Wang, who's currently our advisor. Actually, he became our advisor since we met him at the at that last pitch. And so our customer, Carolyn, always knew about this trade organization called the International Downtown Association. And she said they're having a conference in North Carolina in October. And it'll be good for you guys to go down there and present. And so we told our advisor about it, but we said, hey, we are bootstrapping this thing. We don't think it's worth our time to go down there. He said, oh, no, go try it. Here's I'll pay for your entry. And so it's very simplified now. The deck is pretty simple. People who look at it can understand. If they have more questions, we're always there to answer. And also importantly, we implemented, so technology, especially consumer-facing technology, is growing so fast. What's valuable is whether or not all the stakeholders, all the targets of your product are actually using your product. And so we implemented analytics package in November. So we launched our MVP. We had no idea how many people were using it, what it was doing. But we launched it anyway, and we just kept selling it. We implemented the analytics package in November, and thankfully, we've gradually seen the trend go up. There's a number of active users per month. We've seen the sessions continue to rise, and this is just on iPhone. And so this is now part of our pitch because investors want to see that. They want to know that this thing has value. And then also, we talk about our ask a lot more now. So we say what we're asking for, we have it tied to milestones, so revenue milestones and actual value creation milestones. And then so the way we talk about customers is that we found this white space by targeting the business improvement districts. And we give them this branded solution. And no one is really doing that now. There are people who build apps for communities if they want the app, but no one is staying with them saying, your merchants are looking for ideas about how to best market their businesses. Here is the knowledge that we have that we can share. No one is staying with them to actually create value. We're doing that. So the way we talk about competitors is that right now they're not really doing it. They can probably crush us if they decide to spin off a company and do something like this. Yes. But given their funding, so given the investors' funding to us, we can execute on this quickly because we've shown that we can do it, and hopefully be an acquisition target for these companies. So that's how we position that. And then we talk about the team. So this is a team that's me, Kalen. He was a biomedical engineer at Northwestern, worked at Abbott. Phil is in charge of our design and user experience, and Matt's our technology officer. And that's a key part of what investors look for. They just want to know that you have a team and that your team works well together, and no matter what differences you have, you find a way to manage them and actually execute. So that's important as you continue to focus on growing your business. Yep.
On that aspect of the team, kind of just to ask a little bit more on that, how do you state that? Is it just we bring this is a resume, or is it we work well together, or these are our roles, I'm the chief whatever, and the person is the
Yeah. Yeah.
How long do you focus on that versus the successful ones you've had so far?
People have different philosophies. Some people start with a team on the first slide.
Yeah.
I put it towards the end, and I don't really state the positions. I don't say CTO and because you're a startup, and so for me, I've always felt a little weird calling myself the CTO, the CEO when I don't know what's it, Sergey Brin? Is it Larry Page? So Google CEO is the CEO. The CEO of Johnson Controls is the CEO, and I am also CEO. I think, so my perspective on it is just to focus on what I do for the startup. So I call what I do operations management because I do a little bit of everything, but really what I do is on the administrative stuff, a little bit of technology, a little bit of program management, product management. Kalen sells, so I just call it business development technology. And so for me, I think it takes a little, because I don't know how people will perceive it or how they understand me calling myself a CEO would be, I don't risk that bias by saying it. I just talk more about what we do individually. And then we try to get pictures where we're all smiling and they have bright colors so they can see, it's a team that works well together. And the reaction that we've gotten, by people who've looked at it, because the last week or two, I pitched the I2A, so you guys have met Kapil, Mr. Larkings, his group, and Kevin Willer of the CEC. We just met, and every time they see this page, they're like, "Oh, great team! Yeah, we'd like to help you guys." And it's nothing that I say; it's more what they see. And so, get some green in there, get some smiles in there, get some colors in there, make it work. And so the takeaway where we are now is value proposition, check, business model, check, product, check. But they're all open to change. We met with Kevin Willer, and within 5 minutes he said, you know, your product is great, but your value, you guys need to hire people, put them in these districts, and make them work. They're your employees. Let them teach people how to use this tool and other social media strategies to extract value. Right? That's what he said. And this was within 5 minutes talking about it, and I said, that's great, you know, this works, we're more than open to change. The guys at I2A said, well, social media, you need to find a way to focus on it. Are you focusing on students? Are you focusing on moms? So what did we do? We went back, run a Facebook campaign in Evanston, and so it just served up ads for Andy's free, whatever, smoothie, I think? No. Custard. And we saw people click on it, and people actually went to use the redeem. So, you know, it's going to change. It's never going to stay the same. And we're open to that, so long as it makes sense, and we want to see this thing work. And if we push it far enough and it doesn't work, then we'll go find something else to do. What we've learned, in addition, so in all the other presentations I talked about value proposition, business model, product, partnerships. Partnerships, you know, I'll be the first one to admit this. Like when we first started out and people said, oh, I worked at Groupon, do you want to talk? Or go talk to someone who's done this before. I'd be a little hesitant to go talk to them about it because I thought there was something special about the fact that we are signing contracts, so didn't want anyone else to know to go sign contracts. I didn't want to say too much about the business because I thought someone would copy it. And I've learned quickly that it really does not matter. Right now I'm at the position where if someone wants to build what we've had, they can have at it. And even if you're starting out, I think the same thing applies. If you have an idea that you don't want to share or get into, you don't want to be open about, you're giving people less of a chance to help you. And secondly, if they want to do it, and they're willing to invest the time and passion and energy that you are willing to, then it's likely you either collaborate, you'll get there before them, or they'll get there before you. Whether or not you tell them about your idea, those situations are also likely to happen if they were thinking about something like that before. So you have more to gain and less to lose by talking to people. Because today there's just so much technology, so much consumer-facing technology, that right now it's more about finding ways to collaborate and less about, you know, just being afraid that someone's going to steal your idea. I ran into someone at a conference, and they worked for Emerson, I think, and I think Emerson competes with Johnson Controls. So we just got into this discussion about, oh, yeah, I used to work for Johnson Controls. We were talking about how we did business, and I said, yeah, that's right. You guys compete with Johnson Controls, right? And he said, well, we don't like to say that anymore. So this was last year. So we don't like to say that anymore. We just like to say we collaborate. And they're clearly competitors. They're all Fortune 50 or Fortune 100 companies, and the stakes are high there. But they're finding ways to make things work, right? And if that applies to them when they have all the gears sort of oiled, then I think more so it applies to us, the stage where we're trying to start something where we need all the help that we can get. So that's my perspective there. And I just want to leave with what Dean Blunt has been talking about lately with her Think Bravely campaign. And she said, in the 21st century, it's more about driving problem-focused knowledge creation and less about creating these silos of knowledge. It's more about solving the problem. And that's what the MVP is all about, right? The MVP is all about building something, assuming that there's a problem, and trying to solve the problem with the MVP. And once you do that, then it's less about the tool and more about the value that you bring over time. What we are learning at Sweetperk is, yes, this tool is there, and business improvement district managers like it, but the big problem that Groupon sees, that all these people who are trying to extract value out of local merchants see, is that it's hard to get marketing to work for local merchants. It's just hard. It's a problem. And so right now what we're focusing on is building the knowledge base to solve that problem. Whether or not we can do it, that's still open to question. But essentially, we never would have gotten to this stage without getting this MVP done as quickly as we did and trying to iterate through it. And so I'll stop here. I think I've talked for a long time. And I'll open the floor to questions. There's an opportunity to ask me anything you want. I will try my best to answer as candidly as possible because that's what I like to do. And you feel free to email me after this. I'll be more than happy to help.
I think you touched on this, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you position yourself having an unfair advantage or competitive advantage against your peers. Because one of the things that our team is struggling with is trying to come up with that for the pitch in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And so we look at two things. We look at we're creating a kind of like a mobile app or project management platform for film and TV production, making the process more efficient. And so one of our competitive advantages we think is that this idea has come up organically from within our group. We have people that are in the undergrad school of communication, they've had these problems before, so we're leveraging their insights and their knowledge. So team composition is really important. Then two, we've lined up many alpha testers, so about 20. And we think that is a significant competitive advantage as well. I mean, this is like within debate within our group. And I see parallels to kind of what you did, because you are saying that you have a great team composition, and then you also spoke to a lot of customers in downtown Evanston.
Right.
So, but how do you exactly position it in the beginning, and then how have you progressed since there, and what type of feedback are you getting?
So the competitive advantage you're talking about is with relation to how your product stands in the market, or about?
Like, why is our team better positioned to do this than anyone else out there? So
Right.
we realize that if Google or Facebook wants to just siphon off a team from their group and do it, they could kill us in a second. But this is not their focus. This is not what they do.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're really going after.
Right.
So, like, yeah, I mean, how do you think about it for your team?
So for your project specifically, I'm not sure because I just heard about it, and so I need to think about it more. But I think the more important point is that you will learn over time what it is. I think you need to take a position now based on what you know. So I'll give you an example. There's Salesforce.com has this thing called Chatter for companies, and it's essentially Twitter for your company, like while you're inside your company. And I was reading about their competitive advantage, and they said essentially it's this simple. It's that there's a lot of privacy concerns around Twitter and all these social media sites, and by building Chatter for companies, they allow the employees of companies to be as vocal as they want without having to worry about whether or not their proprietary information gets leaked out. So it's very simple, it's straightforward. When you read it, you get it, but I don't think they would have gotten there, when they first came up with that idea. It just takes time for these things to evolve. So from what you're saying about your platform, your competitive advantage will come from talking more to users, right? So you have 20 beta testers lined up.
Yeah.
And so based on how they test it, based on what they say they gain value from your offering, that will get weaved into where your competitive advantage is. But I think you need to acknowledge the fact that if another company decides to, you need to first validate that another company isn't doing this in the way that you are. And also, you need to acknowledge that if they want to, they could easily crush you, but this is what you could do to get there quicker than they can, and it'll be cheaper for them to buy you versus try and build something like that. It's a very general answer to your question, but I don't know whether...
It addresses part of it. I think what you touched on is a little bit what we're going to talk about in terms of how we're different from our competitors.
Yeah.
But one of the big things that Mike and Todd are asking us is like, what is special about your team? So
Right.
I don't want to drag this out because there's people want to ask questions, but it's a struggle for sure.
Yeah, and you can put some comments on this, but for us, our team, and what I say when I show that slide, and why I try and show the smiles and the color is that we started working on something, and we've built something together. I think just by telling that story, most people who you're presenting to understand how difficult it can be to get people to work like on their own. So really strongly opinionated people, smart people, people who have their own ideas about how things should go, still working together to build something, and that says it on its own. So that's how I present the competitive advantage of our team. That's why the team is very important, because once you say you have a team, people understand that you're capable of executing. So as far as that competitive advantage, I think you guys are just, you're gonna have to, and then if you have to figure out what it'll take for you to build something, then, you know, my style is, I don't think of myself as a leader, per se, but most people think of me as one. And I really don't know how I do it. I like to work. And I like to get my hands dirty. And so it's probably more like leading by example. And I think that's a role that every team needs. Some people are able to inspire just by talking. But I don't think the top-down approach works for a startup, especially when you don't have money to pay. So that's my personal perspective.
Keep in mind, we're pushing you guys for what we, for these key differentiators, knowing that you may not really have them, okay? But I think it's important that you think about that now, because you're always gonna get asked that question. If I look at Sweetperk today and say, what is the competitive advantage? Yeah, could Groupon go into this business tomorrow? There's a lot of other people that can get into this business. But what they have done is build some traction in a specific market that, what I worry about for them is they got a bunch of leads that are outside of Chicago that they're not pursuing yet because they don't have the capital to pursue them, right? And is that leaving a window for someone else? But they've gotten traction, and in some ways the knowledge base that they have built, which is public information technically, it's nothing unique, is their advantage. And that where I think their Sweetperk's unique opportunity is if they can crack the code about how small businesses can tap all these different online media sources to drive business to them, to drive customers in the door and retain customers in the door. If they can figure that out, that's a unique positioning, that's a unique opportunity, not only for them, but for small businesses, who many view as being challenged in this space. Small businesses are not going to go away, but they don't have the time of day to do a lot of these pieces, and they can't hire an agency to do it or a marketing consultant to do it. They need something in the middle, and what Sweetperk potentially represents is that solution. And I think Austin's told you, he doesn't have all the pieces yet, but he's a hell of a lot more closer today than he was when he was in this class. And every day that they're out there, they're doing it. There's three other team members besides him that are part of this. They're, two of the other three are out actually at a customer site today. That's what they should be doing. So it's building that knowledge over time, which is a challenge. And it's hard to explain yet because you guys don't actually have that all yet, right? Because you just got MVPs that are being built and such. But remember, we're looking at it in terms of how you're thinking about it and how you're going to get there, not exactly where you're at at any one particular point in time.
I was just gonna ask, so what is the specific answer when you're in front of someone and they ask so how could Groupon, what if Groupon just decides to modify their Groupon Map project a little bit and directly compete against you? What is your answer? Because I'm sure you get that every once in a while.
Yeah. So if the question is about Groupon specifically, my answer would be that based on the conversations we've had with our customers, so the business improvement district managers and their customers, their actual merchants, is that Groupon has sort of a damaged brand with them, primarily because, and I think Groupon could do this if they wanted to, but they haven't really spent the time to make sure that people who run a Groupon, so people who run an offer on Groupon, understand the economics of it and know what to expect, and because of that, it's damaged that brand. So yes, they could potentially try and do something. They could rebrand a small company and do it, but that takes time and effort. On our side, we've built these relationships that afford us referrals. So we have more of a trusted brand. People, when they talk about us and what we do for them, they understand that it's very economical, and it's something that if they actually invest the time in, they can see results. So I will cap that all off by saying that we have more of an opportunity to quickly execute and build scale so that when Groupon decides to do something like this, instead of doing it themselves, they can buy us and give the investor a return on his money. Hey, Chip.
So Austin, how did it go with your pipeline that you got from that conference, and what's constraining you from, if anything, from working with that?
it went great with the pipeline. We've been sending them sort of touch point emails to let them know that we're still following up with them. We're busy. The constraint is that we don't trust our current backend because it's an open source server that's free, and we don't know how well it will handle excess traffic. And also, we don't have the platform on other mobile phones. So what we're waiting to do is to move the backend to something that's more scalable, so Heroku, and then move over to a platform that will allow us to be on multiple mobile phones. So that's why we haven't built for any of them yet. Also, actually, a key point is, this is where we are, as Professor Marasco aptly put it, is we're trying to crack the code for how local merchants, so essentially adaptly for local merchants, if it's an easy way to think about it. How to price it, so first of all, how to crack that code, or some part of that code, and also how to price it. So this really gives us an opportunity to further refine that before we take it out. So, okay, to you.
Can you talk a little bit about your decision to choose Heroku to scale? Because right now we're using Heroku for testing and thinking about potentially moving away from it to scale because it's about 50% more expensive for an equivalent amount of hosting for the convenience of being able to just push your repo to it.
Yeah, great question. I would say the decision to move to Heroku now is because we have some revenue coming in and we can afford to pay for it. So the reason why we did AWS earlier on is because we had no money and we needed to support something. So right now we're willing to invest in, to prove that the platform is scalable and to show other people that regardless of the amount of traffic that you get, this thing, we are a legit company, even though we're a startup. That's why. Plus the convenience it gives as far as pushing stuff and deploying quickly. This question back there.
Yeah, I just wondering, talking about scale, I think you had a slide where by 2012 you had 450K in revenue, and then by 2014
Yep.
you're projecting 21 million.
Yep.
So I was wondering, how do you plan to scale it up? And given the numbers from 450 to 21 seems like a big jump.
Yep.
What are your plans on that?
Yeah. So essentially, the platform we have now doesn't really do much for us as far as revenue. Here, we talk about premium marketing services, where we charge $175 a month per merchant who wants to do that. So there are over 1,000 bids within the U.S. Our target is about 200 of them on average. On average, each of them has about 200 merchants. We estimate about 40% of them will be actually running perks, and 50% of that number would be doing this. And so that, alongside other platforms, allows us to get to that revenue target. As far as getting there, so part of our marketing involves this ambassador. So in every community, we estimate that we'll need to have someone on the ground working with these bids to actively keep them engaged, changing the content on the app, and also using its functionality in a way that they see revenue and keep changing the content. So the financial model shows that we can get there so long as we hit our customer acquisition. So partner with a bid that has 200 merchants and then continue to grow from that with monthly payments. Yep. Yeah.
How did investors react to just kind of the size of your projection, just in terms of 20 million not being a good scenario, and because we're working on something similar that will not be a billion-dollar business for sure.
Right.
So it might still be a viable business model, but it's not going to be crazy money. How did they respond to it? Was that never an issue for you guys, or how did you frame the discussion?
So a few things there. So Han, I mentioned this on our advisory board. The first thing he told us when we showed a much smaller number, he said, find a way to make it big.
Yeah.
Because the investors, I mean, they just want to see a big number. They know it's fictitious. They'll work with you. So that actually proved very valuable to us. So, and the way we pitch it is, we add that 21 million to the other million before and add it all up. And on their executive summary, what they see as potential is like 70 million or something like that. So that's how we pitch it. We just say in 5 years, you're looking at this.
So this is just like a big number to generate interest. Just like, oh, now you have my attention.
Yeah. So the first time he told me about it, I was like, I'm not so sure. He said, just, it's, you're selling the business. It's not, you're not selling something perfect. You're not selling something that you know for sure is going to be this way. So you just need to do a good job of selling it. And that isn't a lie, it's just a sum of a few numbers that is worded in a way that they can understand if they're paying attention, but they just see that big number. Now outside of, so that aside, I wouldn't worry so much about what the potential is now, because you don't really know what the potential is. You're building this financial model and you're making a projection based on what you're assuming. You have no idea how much your target market is going to pay for the value that you're bringing. So I would say, yes, if you have some numbers now, just figure out a way to market it well. Because once you build the MVP and you highlight this pain point, and you find a partner and an investor, they will help you figure out how to monetize this way beyond what you ever dreamed of. And just always remember that a potential exit is being acquired for a multiple of what you're valued. So I'd do a good job of putting it together and marketing it, but then I wouldn't worry much beyond that for now. Yep.
How did you kind of estimate your cost per acquisition, especially in the beginning when we were just getting started?
Yeah. So now I can tell you how we estimated, but back then we had no idea. We didn't have this model for cost. But right now, this cost per acquisition per bid, we factored in the amount of time it takes to engage a community. So we consider web conferencing time, we consider phone call time, we consider visiting the merchant twice. We consider the time spent there training their merchants about the platform and how it works. And we also factor in the amount of material that we have to give them to get ramped up. And then for the annual marketing, essentially the ambassador, we don't expect to pay the ambassador more than, for more than 40 hours of work per month, because we have some ideas about leveraging either students or college programs to do that marketing. And so that's how we figured it out. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a question or no?
I was wondering how you funded yourself after this class was over, and how that sustained.
That's a tough one. I don't know. I've always wanted to do this, because my dad had a company when I was growing up in Ghana, and that's always stuck with me. And so I was an international student when I first came to the United States. And one of the key things I needed to get was my residency so I can actually do this. And so while I worked for my old company, I put some money aside, didn't know what I would use it for, came to Kellogg, was graduating, saw that there's a potential here, so I just supported myself. Phil, who's an undergrad, he needed some help, so we just through the connections we made in Evanston, partnered with a consulting company here, so he does some part-time work for them. And Kaylin didn't need help. So I wish I could have said we had a magic formula going in, but it just, and right now I'm at a point where, I'm beginning to think, okay, my runway is getting to a point where I need to get some cash coming in. So, we have some soft commitments from some financiers. Hopefully we get a check coming in the next few weeks. If not, I'll do what I have to do to continue. I guess is the approach you want to take. Yep.
A lot of times VCs ask this question, what is it that keeps you up at night when you think about this business? What's the one thing right now?
It's the first time I've gotten asked this question. What keeps me up at night is that it's clear to me that we have this value proposition, and it's clear to me that this problem exists. But our target for this solution, the local merchant, it's just hard to get them to listen to you. So I always wonder to myself, how are we ever going to get to where we need to be with them, as far as them using this platform and using the potential that they have. I just read an article yesterday about why Facebook advertising doesn't, or why a Facebook page doesn't work for a local merchant. And the point of the article was that a local merchant will benefit when someone eats a bowl of chili, just loves it, takes a photo